Well, welcome back. Today, we will be doing some back bending and heart opening. So, grab your blankies, whatever you need, your supplies. For today's practice, things you might like to have. Always a blankie. Like to have, not need to have. Maybe a block or two. And a little bit of patience. If you have some of that stored away, just grab a little bit, maybe a lot of it, and head over to your mat. Starting in a nice centering posture. So I've been really liking this one. And if this one's great for you, fantastic. If you prefer like a child's pose or even seated cross-legged, then just go ahead and get into some kind of comfy position for a few moments as we get started. And once you're there, just taking a nice deep inhale to sit up tall. And then we exhale, closing the eyes. And we begin our centering. So it's nice to center before our yoga practice begins, allowing our body just a few moments to stabilize. So on a physical level, that's things like heart rate, blood pressure, that kind of thing. And mentally, it's just to sort of slow things down. And even emotionally, just allowing yourself to decompress a little bit. So giving yourself a few moments and settling into your centering posture. And while you're here, starting to bring your attention to your mat, your space on your mat. One of the things I really like to do in my centering time is to remind myself a bit that this practice, it's for me. And some of us, I'm having trouble speaking today. Some of us spend so much time running around and helping out others and gladly, right? Like we maybe have spouses or children or parents or people we're looking after, and that's great. But it is good to fill our own cup up again and recharge. And a stretchy type of gooey class of yoga is really ideal. So taking a few moments now to remind yourself that this practice is just for you, not in a selfish way, but on the contrary, if you take care of yourself, filling your own cup up, it allows you to help others more later. And with that in mind, choosing an intention for your practice today. So maybe that is to replenish energy. Maybe it's to find more peace within, more patience, or maybe you're looking for more flexibility. Whatever you're looking for today on your practice, it might be different from yesterday, or tomorrow might be different. Just taking a moment to think about, what is it I need today? And then the last few moments here, starting to elongate the breathing. So slow, deep inhale, and slow exhales. And slowly blink the eyes open, and we'll make our way all the way up and back to a downward facing dog. So if you are in hero pose, because clearly I can't say the word Virasana. There, you did it. If you are in that accordion style pose for the legs, it's nice to press up and back.
Before I'm ready. I've never been to another anything, but I'm looking forward to it when I figure it out on my own.
And then slowly come back to hands and knees. And our first posture today is Anahatasana, heart chakra pose. So for this one, from hands and knees position, start walking the hands forward, but keep the hips over top of the knees. So we're not moving forward, but keep the hips back and allow the heart to melt down towards the floor. Maybe your forehead reaches a block or even the floor itself. Slowly, being really cautious, moving nice and slow, even if you're flexible. And for our last few moments here, if you're a little bit more flexible, feel free to move the chin, if it's okay on your neck, towards the floor. And eventually the heart itself reaches the floor. And slowly come on all the way back up. And our next posture is high flying dragons. So for this one, if you have a couple of yoga blocks, they're nice to have but not a need to have. So for this one, it's a low lunge. So right foot steps forward, and then the back knee might want to go onto a blanket, like so. So now here I am, my legs are kind of at a 90-degree angle and I'm up really high. You can't even see part of me. What we want to do is have a nice long stance on your mat. So back leg is quite far back. And then leaning forward, forward, forward with the torso upright. Once you've found your position, we begin. Settling in. And if you're really flexible and or have long arms, you might even be able to reach the floor. If you are a little bit tighter in the hips and or have T-Rex arms like me, blocks are nice. While we're here, a couple things we want to do alignment-wise is draw that right hip back and the left hip forward. So we're not cheating and kind of opening up in here, but rather really squaring everything up. And then from there, it's just sinking and melting downwards. You can even close the eyes here and really try to focus. Focus on what? Just being. Feeling the spaces that feel the stretch. What's the breathing like? We're also looking for the edge, always looking for the edge in our stretching yoga practice. And what that means is we don't want to feel too much of a stretch so that we're gripping and guarding against it. We want to feel enough of a stretch that you're actually progressing. Once you've found your edge, then trying to find stillness. This is the part that I find challenging. I'm a fidgeter. So taking a few moments to settle in and find that stillness. And the last few moments, seeing if you can sink and melt a little bit more, if it's available, or maybe you need to adjust just slightly if it's too much. So finding stillness unless the body gives you a little bit more space, or if you've gone a little bit too far. Last deep breath here. And then slowly, slowly, slowly start to come out. Once again, even if you're really flexible, take your time, take your time, take your time. And then we'll prepare for the other side. So I'm going to move my blanket over to the other side for my back knee. And this time, left foot steps forward. And taking the same care and attention as we did the first side. Once you've found your position, settling in, this time front hip draws back so that your hips are square and not one in front of the other, but side by each. And then sinking and melting. Sometimes for me it takes a few slow deep breaths to really settle in. It almost feels like my body's gripping and it's like, oh, what are you doing? But then you kind of sink into it and it feels a little bit more comfortable. And you'll notice that especially if it's been a while since you've done a particular pose. You know, the other thing I find is with yoga, even yin yoga, stretching yoga, we're just sitting here stretching, not moving at all, with the occasional little fidget. But I know I was really cold before I started, and a couple poses in, and I'm quite warm. And that's to be expected if it's a really challenging yoga class. But doing a few stretches, it's quite extraordinary, I find, how much we're actually working just sitting here in a yoga pose. So it's simple, but not necessarily easy. Last few moments here, slowing down the breathing even more. Slow, deep inhales. And slow exhales. And as always, to come out, moving like you're 108, just really, really slowly. Again, even if you're really flexible, just take your time. And our next posture we set up from a seated position. So for this one's half reclined hero pose. So for this one, we want to shuffle over to the left side of your mat and then bend the right leg as in hero pose. So for this one, if available, the knees are together and the foot is right beside the hip. Toes are pointed. So looks like that. There's a tendency to kind of go like this and flex the foot. But what that does is it actually turns the lower leg right within the knee joint. So we don't want to do that. This position is really healthy to have that full range of motion in the knees, but not necessarily this way. So from here, you may feel this stretch in multiple areas, which is why it's so fantastic. You might actually feel it mostly in the ankle. A lot of people feel it. So if that's the case, it just means your ankle is not quite ready to point the toes all the way, in which case you'd want to sit up on a blanket or two or a block or two so that you decrease the angle. If you're okay here, starting to head back. So there's 3 spots where you might feel this stretch. We're trying to target the quadriceps. So the front of the leg is where we're trying to feel this stretch. You might not feel it until your knee becomes more flexible and or your ankle, but just do your best. Starting to lay back. I'm just going to sneaky grab my timer. Nobody sees this. And normally I'd say, and close the eyes, and then I'd grab my timer. So heading back to however far you can go, if you've gone all the way back and you're like, oh, just kidding, that's not working, then come on back up again. Otherwise, maybe laying back onto a bolster, or maybe not laying back at all, maybe just leaning back. Either way, closing the eyes, and absolutely coming out of this one at any time you need to. So no grinning and bearing it, but softening if you can. If you are quite flexible, and this isn't much of a stretch, feel free to bend the other leg and place the foot on the floor. This pose especially, you might find that the first few moments are really uncomfortable, and then fairly quickly the body opens up. And then if you found that the body's elongated a little bit and given you some more space, to adjust this one just slightly, tuck and scoop the tailbone under just a little bit. And feel like you're trying to press the low back towards the floor. And keep breathing. And for this one to come out, either reverse course, or if you are all the way back onto the floor, just roll over to, well, the only way you can go, over to the left side, and then press yourself up to seated. Preparing for the same awkwardness on the left. So we shuffle over to the right side of your mat this time. And then we bend the left leg just the same as we did that first side. Really trying to get those toes pointed so that the shoelaces part of the foot is fully on the floor, not flexing it. So we want the toenails on the floor. Then, when you're ready, heading back. Take the same care and attention on the second side because things might be different. So once again, taking a few moments to target as much as you can the quadriceps. And slow down the breathing. Slowly start to come out. So either reversing course or rolling over. And come on all the way up. Just taking a moment, maybe even a couple little knee taps on the floor. And the next posture is butterfly. So bring the soles of the feet together and allow the knees to fall out to the sides. And then from here, if it's a struggle to stay upright even, you might want to be up onto a blanket just to elevate the hips a little bit, enough so that you don't have to grip to stay forward. Maybe supporting one or both knees if that feels better. And when you're ready, the heart makes its journey forward. So maybe that's a little bit, maybe it's all the way down to the floor. Doesn't matter. Once you've found your edge, close the eyes and find some stillness. And at our halfway point, see if you can melt a little bit more. So that doesn't necessarily mean go further. Just see if you can soften a little bit more. And in our last few moments here, slowing down the breathing just a little bit more. So full, complete inhales and full, complete exhales. And slowly come on all the way up. It's been a while since I've done that one. Extending the legs, maybe a couple little knee taps. And now flipping over onto our bellies for our back bending portion. So all of that was to prepare the body for a little bit of back bending because everything is connected. So laying down, preparing for Sphinx. So coming up onto the forearms with the hands pointing directly forward. Wrists in line with the elbows, in line with middle fingers. And then allowing the heart to melt forward. So we're trying not to just hairpin right at the low back, but rather let the heart melt forward. And then once you've found your position, just closing the eyes and melting into it. So it is a little bit, there's a little bit of strength in this pose. Most of our poses, we try to relax as much as possible, but we do need to find a little bit of arm strength, but at the same time, soften along the spine. So the back softens while the arms remain strong. And allow the heart to open. One little trick, and you know it sounds hooey. It's going to sound hooey. But if you are holding on to something in life, like some memory or some issue, and if it's quite strong, I notice for me, when I get on my mat, my body doesn't like to open up very much. It's like, no, I'm staying here. So even if you have no issues, that's fantastic. But if perchance there is something that you're feeling strong about and you haven't resolved that issue within yourself yet, and that's fine, we're human. But if you are experiencing something in your world, I implore you to try this. Take a deep inhale. And on the exhale, let it go. Just for now. Whatever that thing is, just let it go, like over there. Let it go. And you might notice, hey, that's really weird. I've got a little bit further into my pose. And now getting further into a pose isn't the be-all, but it is interesting how the body does tend to open up when we don't hold on to stuff. Slowing down the breathing. And then slowly release. And maybe it's stacking hands and resting your forehead on your hands, or rest one cheek on the floor. Just taking a moment to really soften into the back. And then preparing either for the exact same thing if that was enough of a stretch for you, or just take a little rest if you're like, yep, that was a lot of a stretch for me and I don't want to do that again. Or if you're looking for a little bit of extra challenge, we're heading into seal. So for this one, it's kind of like cobra. We start with Sphinx, and then all we do is straighten through the arms. Same thing again, we're not trying to hairpin at the low back, but rather allow the heart to move forward so we get a nice even curve throughout the spine, the mid back as well. And if that's not enough of a stretch, feel free to bring your hands back a bit for a bit more of a stretch. And then same thing again, allowing the heart to melt forward. You can even close your eyes and visualize your spine with a nice even curve, like you're trying to make an entire circle with your spine, not just sort of an L shape right at your low back. Same thing with this one. Arms are strong. The back is soft. For this one, if you need to lower down, even if it's just for your arms for a few moments, and then slowly come back in when you can, totally allowed. And then slowly lower all the way down. And then just stacking the forearms once again, forehead to the hands. And from here, heading into child's pose, just to release the back a little bit more. And lowering in, forehead to something, either a block or the floor. Arms either in front of you or along your sides. This is for comfort, not for specific alignment. And then from here, making your way all the way to your back for one of my favorite stretches, twisted roots. So heading back, I like to use my blanket for this one. Just putting the whole pose on a blanket feels nice sometimes. So once you lay all the way back, bending the knees, hugging them in. Now if twisted roots is too intense, feel free to do a different variation, maybe a one-legged or a two-legged. And if you're heading into twisted roots today, right leg crosses all the way over left. And then as the knees move over to the left, the hips shift to the right so that the hips are stacked one on top of the other. And your entire back is in one straight neutral line. Really important to keep the right shoulder on the floor. And looking over to the right if available. And just slowing it down. I'm not going to lie, I sometimes just about fall asleep in this one. And scoop the belly in. Press the low back into the floor. Unravel, unwind. And between sides, hug both knees into your chest and gently rock from side to side. And preparing for the other side. So this time left crosses over right. We send those knees over to the right as the hips shift to the left. And keeping that left shoulder on the ground. Softening into it. And scooping the belly in. Press the low back into the floor. Unraveling, unwinding. And when you're ready, hug both knees in. Rocking side to side. And to come up and out of this one, rolling over to your right side, pausing just for a moment, just like we do coming out of Shavasana. Give your body just a moment. And then slowly press yourself up and we'll prepare for pigeon pose. So for this one, tucking the toes under, we'll head up and back to down dog, but just for a moment. It'll feel really nice. So up and back to downward dog, maybe even walking it out just a little bit, feeling a nice stretch. And when you're ready, right knee moves forward, the foot landing somewhere behind the opposite wrist. Just sort of snuggling down towards the ground, maybe even supporting the right hip with a block if that feels better. And when you're ready, inhale to lengthen and exhale, sleeping pigeon. And we're here for just a little bit, so take all the time you need to get all settled in and cozy. Really softening into those spaces that feel the stretch. And slow down the breathing.
What you took off my gold character, can I remember the rest of my gold? I had 7. I have 6 gold.
And slowly come on all the way up, making your way all the way up and back to downward dog once again. Take all the time you need though. Belly scoops in as you lift the foot up and back, maybe walking it out once again.
Seriously. Where are my gold back? Yeah, I knew that gold was there.
And when you're ready, other side, left knee moves forward, back knee lowers down. Maybe a block beneath the left hip. When you're ready, inhale to lengthen and exhale, sleeping pigeon.
Okay. Right exactly where I go. Yeah, I'll make that.
And slowly start to make your way all the way up and back to our last downward facing dog. So belly scoops in as you lift that foot up and back. Maybe walking it out one last time. Heels gently lower, heart reaching towards the feet. And then belly scoops in as you lower through hands and knees. And it's time for Shavasana. So grab your teddies and blankies, whatever you need to feel cozy. And when you're ready, laying all the way back onto your back. And if your back needs a little extra support today, feel free to bend the knees, keeping the feet on the floor, and allow the knees to tip in towards each other. Otherwise, extending the legs on the ground, arms by your sides, palms facing up, and closing the eyes. Softening everything, but especially through the neck and the shoulders and all the way down the arms. Letting the fingers softly curl. Softening through the face. Softening around the eyes. And even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go.
Well, we want to find out, right?
If you'd like to stay in Shavasana a little bit longer, feel free to do so. Otherwise, starting to come back, wiggling fingers and toes. Gently roll your head from side to side. And reaching your arms above head on the floor, give yourself a big stretch, feeling totally refreshed. And bending your knees one at a time. And roll over to the right side. And do pause for a moment there as you come back. And then slowly start to make your way all the way up to a comfortable seated position, taking all the time you need. But when you do arrive, palms facing up on the knees, inhale, sitting up tall, and exhale, softly close the eyes. Just taking those final moments to thank yourself for showing up to your practice today and taking care of you. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time.